Hey everyone. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is how Shiki finally learns his origins, that which is in fact his mother. And in typical fashion, Mashima does go for much more the comedic panic reaction, but at the same time, you just know behind that whole comedic reaction that this is just another little bit of information that is going to weigh heavily on Shiki's decision, because ultimately whatever route he chooses, he could potentially be killing his own mother. Now, having said that, there are a couple ways I think Mashima could be playing this. The first and most obvious one is he makes it where Shiki does make the decision to restore Mother and ultimately chooses to make the sacrifice, and through his own personal realization of past events, it's almost like one of those things of realizing that letting the ones he loves die in this way or remain dead would, in a certain sense, be mercy. Now, that could be the typical route, but the thing is, Mashima has been known to dip his pen into the idea of our hero going the more selfish option as well. The only question is how that more selfish option would play out. If Shiki goes the route Mother has laid out for him, or if Pino could possibly present a third option onto the table. Because, again, the one thing I have noticed from rereading the past couple chapters combined with this one, is how Mashima is also kind of seemingly dancing around the question of just how binding this promise made between Mother and Shiki is, and whether or not there is a loophole here. Again, I want one that a little robot girl might have potentially a third option to this problem. Although even with that third option, I'm tending to think that it would still require like a sacrifice to be made, and in the sense of that third option, I think Pino would probably sacrifice herself to some degree. So it's like, I think even if there is a third option on the table that Pino represents, I think to some degree I think Mashima is presenting this whole thing in a way where, regardless of whatever decision he makes, there is still going to be a sacrifice he's going to have to make. It's just depending on what kind of sacrifice Shiki is willing to make. I think ultimately is going to come down to it. I think is what's being presented to us, is that ultimately no matter what decision Shiki makes, even if there's a potential loophole option that Pino presents, again, sacrifices are going to be made, and it's just like, what is Shiki willing to sacrifice? Regardless, though, I am feeling vindicated after this chapter that Shiki had made the promise to Mother subconsciously as a baby, like wishing to save everyone from this destruction, but it was made at such a last-minute moment that some of the details of this promise were never fully ironed out, unless those details were made unless the details were kind of set in stone after Mother was reborn and the wish was made. But even then, again, the thing with Mother's like options again in this is, I'm unconvinced Mother isn't putting Shiki through some kind of sick moral test with these two options, and that again Pino is going to still present that final third option on how to fix this, because being reminded that Mother's form is basically the overdrive form of Earth, again, does make me think there's a way out of this we haven't explored yet. The only thing that does prevent me from fully believing that third option, though, is that this chapter does also kind of seem to be pushing the idea that Clown, Wizard, and Brigandine, and of course Brain, and of course Killer, are all dead from having fought their Starshine counterparts. So the idea that the Dark Stars are dead from those fights, I think, kind of pushes more so the idea into Shiki's head that killing everything and everyone to save Mother could theoretically be seen as a mercy in his eyes, as they'd be reunited with their ones they love. At least that's probably how I think Shiki would probably view it. The only uncertainty in that theory for me is how much of a dangling thread the idea of those forgotten memories are, because the big thing for me with this chapter is, regardless of whatever decision Shiki makes, if Shiki does decide to make the big sacrifice, I would still like to see him have a proper reunion with Witch, knowing that they are mother and son. Have the memories restored and just give like Witch and and Shiki one last moment together, one last moment where they can embrace each other and just embrace each other as mother and son. Like I know it's kind of one of those things where we kind of already got a lot of moments with them like that, but it's like I want like an official moment, you could say, like that. Um, with that said, I do like how this chapter does a lot to establish the dynamics among Witch, Valkyrie, Hermit, and Ivory as they were during their lives on Earth, and how we get to see that, yeah, the dynamic hasn't really changed all that much from back then to now. Although the only thing that does stick out to me about Valkyrie in the past is, as a doctor, she seems to have a sick, twisted sense of medical humor just from her exchange with Hermit about using Ivory as a guinea pig for their experiments to save her. Like, it's one of those things where, from a comedic standpoint, you're not helping the stereotype of doctors being scary Valk, but although it is still interesting to see how each of them did contribute in their own way towards saving Earth and creating Mother. And in Ivory's case, I do like how subconsciously that did, I think, lead her to finding the role she did today as a doctor aboard the Eden Zero, despite being wiped of her memories. It was her own way of like repaying the man who would become Clown and Valkyrie for saving her life, and just seeing all these little connections really helped to reinforce the bond they have today, even if they're unaware of their past, leading to the end of the chapter where, yeah, the end of the world begins. And it's pretty obvious this is one of those down-to-the-wire moments. His mother was probably born mere seconds before the planet imploded. I think my only question now is when did Ziggy come into play? Because it's clear they all die and get reborn as androids, but definitely wipe their memories to save them from the near-death trauma of that day. It's just at what point in the timeline after Earth kind of imploded and Mother was born, where did Ziggy come along? Is my question, I guess you could say. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll, push the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of MMA, signing off. Later, everyone.